Hello. The next part of the topic is on drugs, so I'm going to split that over two lessons. So the first lesson is going to be on the left-hand side of this mind map on antibiotics and painkillers. So what we're going to do is build this mind map together and then do some work on it. Okay? So in the middle of the page, you are going to have to write drugs. So I'm doing this in the middle of my page, and hopefully you can do it in the middle of your page too. Just notice that obviously I have done it in the middle. I know it's wonky on the screen, just so you know what's going on. Okay, so middle of the page, title, drugs, and we need to look at basically what are the different types of drugs and what are they used for and how do drugs get developed, etc., etc. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is look at a really important group of drugs, which are antibiotics, which I'm pretty sure all of you at some point have probably taken. Disgusting banana medicine when you're a kid. An example of a really common antibiotic that's used regularly is penicillin. So penicillin is produced by a mould, Penicillium, and some chap discovered it some time ago. We'll have a look at that at some point. Okay, but the really crucial thing about antibiotics is their job is to kill bacteria inside the body, but they only kill bacteria. Okay, so antibiotics kill bacteria inside the body. They do not kill anything else, and that is super important. Okay, do not forget that fact, because that comes up all the time. Antibiotics only kill bacteria. The other thing about them is that specific bacteria need specific antibiotics. So you can't just have one type of antibiotic and expect it to kill all bacteria. If you have got a bacteria that is resistant to one type of antibiotic, it might be killed by another. So what they do is, if you have an infection and they're not really sure what it is, they might take a sample of that and grow it and then figure out which antibiotic will actually kill it. So this is really important. So specific ones for specific bacteria. You can't just use every single antibiotic on every single bacteria. Okay. The other super important thing about them is they cannot kill viruses, and this is really, really important. And this is why we can't just use a antibiotic on COVID-19. It's a virus. They don't kill viruses. The reason antibiotics don't kill viruses is because they live inside cells. So you know this from previous, that viruses live inside cells, and therefore you can't get the antibiotic to actually get to the virus and kill it. So that's no good either. Okay. There is a problem with antibiotics, and that is something called antibiotic resistance. So the trouble with antibiotic resistance is that some antibiotics actually don't work anymore on particular bacteria. So there are certain strains of bacteria, and strains just basically means types. But there are strains of bacteria that are resistant to certain antibiotics. They've basically evolved to become resistant, and we'll look at that at a later date. So strains of bacteria evolved to become resistant to antibiotics. It's really, really important that you say resistant, not immune. So immunity is something that we get if our white blood cells can defend us against pathogens really effectively. Bacteria can evolve to become resistant to antibiotics. It's a different thing. Okay, so that's our little bit on antibiotics and how they kill bacteria. Drugs against viruses, so viral drugs, we have got them. So there are drugs that will destroy viruses, but it's really difficult to develop them, basically because if you can get a drug that's going to kill something inside your cells, it's going to damage the cells too, which then obviously isn't very helpful. Okay, so you need to know this, that it is difficult to develop drugs against viruses. And the reason for that they may damage the body's tissues. So if the virus is inside the cell, if the drug can kill the virus, it's probably going to damage the cell too. Okay, and then the final type of drug that we need to talk about today is painkillers. These are probably the ones that you'd be most familiar with. So from Calpol when you were a small kid to paracetamol now. Painkillers are used really commonly, but the important thing with painkillers is that they treat symptoms. So they treat symptoms of disease. So if, for example, you have got a cold and it's giving you a headache and you take some paracetamol, then that's going to treat the symptoms of your cold. It's going to treat the headache. It's not actually going to kill any pathogens. So the important thing to know about painkillers is that they do not kill pathogens. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is make sure you've got this mind map copied down, and then there's going to be a series of questions on it. We'll finish the next part next lesson.